Carlos, I think we lost you. We lost your audio. I'm not sure why.
It happened. Now, can you hear me now?
Now, yep.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Yes. I'm on Linux and sometimes these things happen. So hi again. My name is Carlos Cordova. I'm the Spyder maintainer. Now I will be your host during this call. So this is the first time that we have been doing this. It is, I mean, it's something that other projects have been doing for a while. We think it's a good idea to gather, I mean, to start creating more engagement with our community, to share ideas about the future. And this is, of course, a safe space to talk about all Spyder related things. But first, there are a couple of important things that you should know before we start with the community properly. So I'll let Isabella to talk about that. So go ahead.
Right. Hello, I'm Isabella. I'm a designer in multiple open source projects, and I do spend some of my time in Spyder. The quick things I'm going to remind you about are I have all the important duties to tell you. First of all, you probably heard this call is recorded. I know Zoom announces that now, but whatever that means for you, you don't have to turn on your camera, you don't have to talk, you don't have to chat, whatever works best for you. Just know that it is recorded and the recording will be public in the end on YouTube. And we also, right, this is a Spyder community event, like any interaction in the Spyder community. Just remember, we do have a code of conduct. I think everything will be fine. Just your general reminder that includes us, by the way, if you need anything with that. So thanks. Take it away, Carlos.
Thank you, Isabella. So Stephanie will post, yeah, exactly, the code of conduct in the chat. So please be aware of it. This is a safe space for you to talk, and we will be attentive to handle possible cases of harassment or inappropriate comments or harmful comments or stuff like that. Yeah, so that could imply the penalties that are mentioned in the code of conduct. So also, we of course we wouldn't like to respond to that, but please be aware.
I wouldn't worry about it too much though. If you've been interacting with Spyder at all, we've been fine. So just your general disclaimer.
It's a nice reminder. So well, since this is our first call, we would like to ask Isabella, especially because, I mean, besides working with us in Spyder, she also works with Jupyter and she runs their community calls. So we would like to ask her first, so that you also know what are the things that you could expect from our community calls. So what are community calls in Jupyter, of course? What are the purpose of it? Do you like them or not? What do you in general think about it? So go ahead.
Well, I want to make sure we don't have time to talk about Spyder in this, but yeah, at least over in Jupyter, our goal is, I kind of liken it to a show and tell, right? It's a place that people can come be like, I love this project that I'm working with in Jupyter that someone else made, that I made, I'm proud of this and want to show it off to people. And so it's kind of just a place that people can come and like, let's not necessarily talk about everything we have to fix or everything that needs to be done or anything too technical. So sometimes it sparks other technical discussions, and just a place that people can join and be excited about this. So that's the goal that we have over there. And I think some of that aligns with Spyder's goals for these calls, though I will defer to the people who organize this in this case. But yeah, that's our goal.
Thanks a lot, Isabella. So yeah, the idea is, I mean, to know better how Spyder is being used by you. Also, if you want to show us interesting projects that you're using, you want to share some things that perhaps are not working well with Spyder, or if you want to tell us your favorite features or your favorite paints, or that's essentially like this is the kind of space. We will also try to prepare for the next calls some topics also to have something else to talk about among ourselves. But of course, if you would like to, to talk about any other things, you are very welcome to do it.
But
Go
speaking
ahead.
of topics, do people have anything that they would like to share today? I know that this is the first call, so woohoo. I don't know if there was a way that people were telling you beforehand if they had topics or if it's just totally open, Carlos.
No, I think for now it's completely open. We don't have a list of topics. So I don't know. Well, I know Blame because I remember him from our interactions in Energy Tracker. So if you want to go first, Blame, please go ahead. Tell us. Why are you here? What are your expectations from these calls? And yeah, and any other things that you would like to share.
Sure. Yeah. So, right now, I'm not a developer, as in like a contributor to Spyder. I'm a user, and I make trouble on the GitHub by coming up with weird issues. But I've been using Spyder for a few years now. From I think this version 3, now it's up to 5, and I do data science, so I'm a consultant, and I do projects for clients, mainly building predictive models. And I really, really like Spyder for a lot of reasons. It just seems to work well for what I do. The things that are really I like a lot are like the fact that I can make cells without having to be in Jupyter. No offense, Isabella. Uh, the I love that, but I still have I can run a single line or something, and I love the variable explorer. I love the outline, um, and the outline is the area where I've had the most trouble, but it's better. Um, it keeps getting better, uh, and um, but that's super important to me because you know, I I love the fact that it organizes functions and and classes and things, and you can just jump around. So that navigation is fantastic. So all those things are nice, and um, the just two things I might add, not really topics, because now I have to think about for next time. Maybe I could offer a topic, but the um, one thing that happens is I exist in various social media channels around data science, and probably a couple of times a month there's a post of I'm getting into Python, or I'm getting into data science, what IDE should I use? And I always say, oh, I love Spyder. And everybody else says, oh no, use VS Code. Or then there's always some crazy people who say, just use Vim and a text editor. And um, so it's interesting to contrast. People are very polarized about these things, and for me it's just about ease of use and fitness for use. And I think that there things like VS Code may be good for people with really big projects, and maybe other non-Python projects. In my world in data science, the code just doesn't get that big, but I might have a couple thousand lines in a really big project, and if I'm being sloppy and not importing stuff and just putting it all in the same file, but I bump into people who say, our code base is 100,000 lines, and we've got all these people, and this is just we use this IDE. So it's interesting to me when people they compare and contrast, and strangely I just I don't find that many people who are like Spyder promoters compared to other IDEs, and I don't know why that is. And I have run into people who used it before, and I say, well, look, the cool thing about Spyder, among other things, is it's actively developed and it's getting better. and you should look at it again. So that's one thing I kind of live in. I at least trying to get people to take a look, because I think it's a good tool for some projects. And the other thing for me is the reasons I end up in Jupyter notebooks, sometimes it's a client, but the other reason is there's certain tools that do things with graphics that are interactive and things that I can't do inside of Spyder. And that's the main reason that I do something else. And so if there is a future world where all that was seamless and I could run virtually the same code, like I was using this package called May AVI, and it's a super, I think it's all Java based, but it's, it's, you can run it in Jupyter, and it's a super fast 3D point cloud tool that you can interact with big data. And man, I would love to be able to develop that code in Spyder, but I have to go into Jupyter to use that and get the interactive and test it. So that's the one area that, if I had a wish list, that would be on it. But yeah, mostly I'm a happy camper, and I super appreciate the responsiveness of the team. So that's my feedback for today.
Thank you. That was great feedback, Blaine. Thanks a lot. And I also appreciate, interacting with you and several other users that, yes, perhaps sometimes they come with crazy issues like, why is this failing? Why is this happening? But still, no, it's really good to know that, you're really interested in the project. For us, that's a really nice motivation. To know that the tool is useful and that you also want to see it improve because it's not working well. And things like, for example, the airline are not working very well, but of course, we're trying to improve it. Let me tell you or share my own thoughts about why we don't get too much publicity. So one thing is that we are sort of an indie project, sort of. In the sense that, for example, I don't belong to academia. I'm not a professor or something. I'm also not, I don't live in USA or Europe. I live in South America. And those things, prevent us, for example, or me specifically, to attend conferences or go promote Spyder to national labs or universities or stuff like that. And in that, Jupyter has practically taken all the lead, so they spread completely through universities and stuff like that. So that's the main thing. But we're not completely indie, so perhaps you don't know, but we work, most of us in the core team work for Quanset. Quanset is a company that was created by Travis Oliphant, the creator of NumPy, also founder of Anaconda. And a couple of, almost 4 years ago, he created this spin-off company called Quanset, which is more focused on services and support and stuff like that. And they have been instrumental for us to keep working in Spyder. Because, that's the main reason, for example, that we could hire Isabella and all the nice icons and the new theme in Spyder 5 and all that stuff came thanks to Isabella. But also Stephanie, who's in the call. Stephanie, I met her in Colombia. She's a very good developer, and now she's spending, depending on the amount of work that is available on Quanset, sometimes all or her time, or other times part of her time on Spyder. And that's very, very good because, yeah, the amount of issues that we receive per month is around 200 issues. And it's strange that I don't know why we don't get too much publicity, but users seems to like Spyder a lot, or at least they approach us a lot, perhaps, as you say, because of our responsiveness, or because we try to give them help, not only about Spyder, because sometimes it's about, I can install this package can run for me, or stuff like that. Go ahead, Isabel.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I don't know, were you trying to go through like different people are here? I know we have some other people on the call who hadn't spoken, so I wanted to check if people like Brian or Melissa had anything that they wanted to say too.
Yes, of course. I was just commenting a little bit about Blaine, but let's give the word to Melissa. So go ahead, Melissa.
Oh, I'm just a lurker here. So I'm, hello, I'm Melissa. I have been working at Quantsite also for almost 2 years, and I do work mostly on NumPy, but I am a long time user of Spyder. So I used to be a professor at the university in Brazil, where I'm based at, and I used to use Spyder a lot with my students. And so yeah, I don't do any sort of development on Spyder, but I'm a user, and I am here to see the community grow. And I am excited for all the initiatives around the Spyder community, and I want to help as much as I can. I don't have any feedback at this point, but
No worry, that's fine. Thanks a lot, Melissa, for attending. What about you, Brian?
And if you don't,
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna. Actually, ironically, I just got off of my bicycle, so let's see. So I am a scientist. I'm a crystallographer, and I, for the last, well, I guess for the last 30 years or something like that, I've been developing code, but it's been taking a larger portion of my life over the last decade. And I alternate between working in Spyder and Emacs. Emacs I'm a lot more comfortable with, but I just go back and forth between them depending on what it is I'm doing. I do all my debugging. I should say I do about half the debugging I do, but I just put a call in to open an IPython window at a particular point in the code. Otherwise, I'll do it in the debugger and in Spyder. And I love the outline feature as well. That's always open. For me, let's see, what kinds of things can I think of that are issues for me? Sometimes for reasons that are unclear, Spyder really just bogs down, and I may, I'll type and it takes 10 seconds, 15 seconds for characters to arrive. And I'd like to figure out how I can debug that or provide some feedback as to what's actually going on. I think the answer is just simply to stop the program and start it again, but I'm sort of lazy when it comes to that. And the only other thing I can think of is that, and I'm using a somewhat older version, I think I'm using the development version that I actually put in a patch myself at one point on 5.1.0. So it's probably things have progressed significantly, but I'm curious how the file viewer filters are saved, because whenever it comes up, the list, when I start a new session, the filter settings are empty. I then do a reset, get what I want, and then you'd think that it would get saved, but I have to go back and do that again next time I use the code. So I was trying to figure out how is this saved, where it is saved. I was going to try to debug it, and I just gave up because I couldn't figure out what was going on.
Thanks a lot, Brian. So about the things that you mentioned. So first, yes, there were a lot of sluggishness in the editor after some time. Since another user started to complain again a lot about that, I started to track that down last month. I found several things, and now most of them are fixed in the latest release, 5.15. There is still one thing that will improve responsiveness with large files. Now, I mean, the problem was that we had very serious memory leaks. We didn't know that. I fixed most of them, but still folding is giving us some trouble, especially for large files. So if you're working with files with more than 1,000 lines or 2,000 lines, you will see some sluggishness, not so bad as before, and not constant. And that was also improved. That will be improved in our next version, 5.2.
Yeah,
How about-
typically I'm working with 10,000 line files.
Okay. Still, I added some, I mean, some timeouts so that, for example, the larger your file, the longer it takes to update folding so that you don't experience those sluggishness so much. We will try to improve on the front next year a bit more because, yeah, we need to do an important refactoring in the editor to approach the problem from a different angle. Right now, the best that we can do is what we are doing right now. I'm glad that you also like the outline. I put a lot of effort, for example, thanks to Blaine issues and other users. Well, I noticed that they were also using the outline a lot. So there's still one bug with namespace packages. So for example, if you have like your initial package doesn't have an init file, but below that, all your packages have init files, then the outline is broken or semi-broken. I kind of know how to fix it. I'll try to fix it for 5.22. And I forgot to mention one other thing about what Blaine said, and that is the problem with not being able to use, for example, Bokeh or Altair or Plotly or libraries like that in Spyder. So we're aware of that, and we will try to add a new panel to the a new pane, sorry, to the interface to fix that, or to, I mean, for users to be able to use those libraries in Spyder. We know that that's perhaps one of the biggest reasons that people still use the Jupyter Notebook. And the thing is that, of course, those libraries use the whole power of the web, of a web browser to display animations or don't worry, or stuff like that. So what we will do, thankfully, is that, I mean, what we'll do is to add web widgets inside Spyder. So thankfully, Qt, which is the framework that we use to develop Spyder, has bindings to Chromium, basically. So we are able to embed a whole web browser inside Spyder, and yeah, that will work in a similar way to the plot pane. So each console will have its own browser, and in that browser you will be able to see, at least at the beginning, plots generated by those web libraries. And afterwards, we hope to support also, for example, IPython widgets, which is also, I mean, a really nice way to explore your code. I mean, to create a graphical interface to explore your code. And those are kind of important limitations we know. Yeah, we are aware of that, but we'll try to fix them. But now, let me go ahead.
Oh, well, I may derail whatever you were going to say, but I was going to ask,
No
like,
problem.
I'd be really curious if anyone who's using Spyder wants to like show us their workflow or like layout just as an example, but I don't know if you're going to say something. I love to see demos in these calls, even if the demo is just like, I use it for this. People often underestimate how cool their work is to people who aren't doing it daily. So sometimes it's awesome to see. Does that derail whatever you were going to say, Carlos?
No, it's fine. No, I mean, if you feel comfortable, I give you permission to share your screen. So if you want to
Right,
do it,
yeah.
Brian, Melissa, or Blaine, you.
Yeah, obviously no one needs to answer that question. I know sometimes people are like, oh, my files are top secret because I do super important work. And I'm like, okay.
I'm
I'll
happy to
try and bring
share.
something up.
Let's
Oh, I'm sorry,
see.
go ahead.
Yeah, let's see. Certainly more interesting than looking at me. Okay, so this is what I am working on at the moment. Actually, not particularly this function, but that's how I have my screen set up. And I, as you can see, just put in a breakpoint so that I can start playing around with code. And what I actually want to do is I have some data in a plot, and and I need to make a figure out of that. Let's see if I can find the plot that I'm actually playing with. That may be more difficult to bring up. Yeah, I can't bring that up because it's a moment and it's stopped in the debugger. But anyway, but I need to take things out of that figure, and I thought I would just poke around in the code and see if I could do some introspection within matplotlib to try to find things rather than to go modify my code to dump all the objects out. So, but this is pretty typical for me. The online help is wonderful, particularly since here's the online help for what I'm working, for my own code, so I can, if I want to find, I can, I've written most of this module here. Let's see, come on. Of course, it's not going to work when I'm showing it to you live. But it brought it up actually here, so I can go, find the different widgets and look up the docs. Not quite as nicely formatted as read the help, but read the docs, but with Sphinx, but it's still nice. Variable Explorer is wonderful. I don't use the plots at all because my app app creates all of its plots and embedded in a WX Python window. I use this a lot to open stuff. I don't use this to find as much as I should, because I tend to use grep from the command line. And the breakpoints are nice to be able to bring in. The only thing I think that I would love would be, rather than, if I want to keep something in place, I'll do this. It would be nice to have a toggle. So I could just simply say, deactivate this for right now.
Like deactivate that breakpoint, you're saying?
Yeah, right.
Oh,
right. So
that's really cool.
I agree. It's an interesting idea.
yeah. I don't know. I'm trying to think, but my problem is that I feel like there's so much stuff here. I feel like I'm scratching the surface. I need to know what else is here. So anyway, that's my share.
Thank you so much. I know I said it before, but I truly love seeing what people are doing. It's so informative.
I would
I can
imagine,
share if you
particularly for the work that you do in Divine, because you're involved in sort of designing user interfaces, right?
Yeah, getting user feedback really matters to me. You're correct. But yeah, Blaine, were you trying to say?
You want me to show you my layout, what I'm doing?
If you're ready.
Yeah, let me give it a shot. Let's see what happens. There, share. So I live in dark mode, and this is pretty much always my layout. Code console, and variable explorer is usually on top here. I do use history. I even recovered from kind of a big screw up the other day that I crashed something and I'd sort of lost something I was working on, and it turned out it was still in history. So when I reopened Spyder, I did a copy paste and I got the code I thought I'd lost. And I found that tip online somewhere. Somebody knew how to do it in Spyder, and I'd never used history that way. But it was like, you've got a buffer somewhere. I don't know. And when I reloaded Spyder, it was in there. It's like, wow, you just saved my day. So I use plots. And this is an example. I'm actually processing. This is simulation data from HFSS, which is a electromagnetic simulation software. And this is radio frequency data of a cavity that's being probed, and these are different frequencies, and these red things, I'm finding the peaks and doing stuff with them. this looks really typical, and say some of these, then I'd be loading a bunch of machine learning stuff as well. You know, this piece I'm showing you is more of a processing part where I'm creating data for a downstream step. But yeah, it's you know, to me, it's you know, this piece is just so great that I can, you know, and I kind of have a standard way I organize things now, so I can jump around certain pieces of my code. So I have certain blocks that typically show up, and it's just so nice to be able to jump to that and say add another configuration variable or add another library and rerun that block and then go back to where I was. So it's I just love everything about it for what I do. That's about
Wow.
it.
No, but this
Next
is
time
so
I could
cool,
show you
right?
more machine learning stuff, but I'm not really prepared for that today.
Yeah, no worries. I totally asked last minute. I don't know that anyone did before, but right, just seeing even just the two of you, right? You have totally different layouts. You're prioritizing different things. Like, I don't know. That's what I love, but I'm a bit of a nerd, you know, so I think it's just cool.
Yeah, and the fact that, I mean, it's so easy to change all that. The drag and drop with the panes is so cool. That, you know, that's just awesome.
That's what what I was about to say. I mean, and the thing that I like when I use a Spyder to develop code, because sometimes I use VS Code and other times I use Spyder, is that panes are differentiated, if you can say that. I mean, you know where where plots are going to be shown because there is a dedicated area for plots and there is a dedicated area for outline, but that's an area that also exists in VS Code. But yeah, the fact that there is no the kind of a hierarchy in the interface is kind of confusing. And that's also that I don't like too much in Jupyter Lab, I mean, because I mean, it's up to the user to decide how to accommodate the interface, but there is like no direction or no clue on how to do that. At least that's my impression when I have used Jupyter. And in Spyder, that could be seen as a constraint, but I think the fact that we are giving that direction to users, it's also nice in the sense that you don't have to worry about that. You know where these different areas are located, and it's up to you to organize them, as Blaine was saying. But we are not we're giving liberty to users to do that, but still we are constraining things a little bit, and I think that's also kind of nice to not give as much freedom as possible, because then the interface it's confusing, I think. Or I don't know what you think about that, Isabel.
Oh, I don't know. I was just gonna say, the other thing though that I think you both said that you have kind of like one layout and you stick to it, right? Did you mention that? Like, because I think
Yeah.
Brian, you were saying, right, that you use that layout when you use Spyder and then that layout for when you need to do one type of task and then you go somewhere else, or did I have that mixed out?
No, you know, it would make sense. I just don't feel, you know, that I think I've saved, I mean, I must admit, I'm a bit confused. Let's see, I think I have set up under, where is it? Let's see, tool, no, on views. Yeah, I've set up I've set up Brian's preference, you know, as a window layout. And that's partly there because if I mess it up, I want to be able to recover it. But it might make sense to do different things at different times, but I really don't. I just tend to do that. The only other thing that I do sometimes is I will open up a new code window. So I like to have, you know, you know, with the code that I'll be debugging maybe spread out over 4 or 5 files. And I like to have all of them open at the same time so I can just switch between them and see, you know, okay, this code and this code are, you know, this goes to here and then that comes back and that kind of thing. So I want to be able to see them side by side. But I don't want to be limited by having one large application take over my desktop. So that's one of the things I'll do in Emacs typically. And there'll be times where I want to be looking at 2 or 3 sections of the same file. So that I can look at, okay, here's where I'm defining this and here's where I'm using it, things like that. And I'm trying to remember, how do I do this? So actually I got through an email from Carlos, but yeah, the new window feature, and I don't know what you call it, but the code pane allows me to have multiple files open, but just trying to think, it doesn't, it tends to bog things down a little bit, and then I don't have the outline working and things like that. So it gets, so it's a little less convenient when I have multiple code windows open.
And that makes total sense. I wasn't telling you should use a different workflow. I just like to clarify.
No, I just want, I like to
interesting.
explore that.
Yeah.
This is such a powerful and versatile tool that, I think it's easy to make the mistake of saying, okay, well, this is the way I've learned to use it. Why change?
Oh yeah, I do that with tools I use where I'm like, why am I like, sometimes I'll see someone do something different. I'm like, why am I not doing that? Like I really do make it hard by just not changing. So yeah, that's a good point. But it can be confusing. Like it can be hard on your brain to switch between, right? Like where things are anchored, where things like where you go to look for things. So that makes sense.
Right. I mean, the reason I use Emacs is I was forced off of Avax back a long time ago, and I had to learn something new, and it was VI or Emacs, and I've mastered Emacs, so why move?
Well, that makes sense. Blaine, did you say the same about having one layout, or did I mishear that?
Yeah, no, what I showed you is pretty much what you're going to see every time.
Yeah,
The only thing I do, because I do use plots a lot, and like Carlos, you guys put in a little fix I asked for to number the plots slightly differently when you save all, because I do that frequently, because I document stuff for clients. So I might generate, 100 plots. Then the fact that I can save them all to a folder and they're numbered is so fantastic. So something I do is I'll drag the boundaries to make the plot window bigger to look at something in a little more detail just temporarily, and then I'll drag it back to have more room for code. So that where those boundaries are moves around as depending on what I want to look at. There's I suppose I could say, well, gosh, it would be nice if I could half of that on a second monitor in the same Spyder session. But I'm not asking for that.
No, but you're not the first person to bring that up, believe it or not. So that's interesting.
And there are 2 things about that. So one is that it's possible. So if you, yes, I know that as Brian said, there are a lot of things that are buried in the interface, and we have been trying to do, to write better docs, but of course, there are a lot of things that we haven't documented yet. But each pane, in the hamburger menu or the options menu of each pane, which is the one that has kind of like 3 or 4 horizontal lines, there is an option or an entry called undock. So basically, you can undock any pane from the interface and move it if you want to another monitor. And there is a nice improvement coming in 5.2 that, I did it a couple of weeks ago, but I haven't had time to push it to GitHub. And is that we will remember the position and the screen where that pane was before you close the Spyder. So the next time you start Spyder again,
that's cool.
Will be positioned exactly as where you put it. Yep.
I'm totally going to look into that. I knew about undock, but it hadn't occurred to me that it would work across monitors. I had no idea that you would remember it, so I will experiment. I learned something. Look at that.
Wow. But so you keep one layout, but you change the proportions. See, that really interests me because that's like, I always think of it, right? I describe layouts in any application. I think of them as like desks a lot. I find it can be really helpful to translate, right, physical or translate software, right, which isn't tangible to like a physical space. And that's kind of cool because sometimes when we talk about layouts, it's like you're moving things totally off the desk, right? Like you're like, I only want
Right.
these things. But in this case, you want everything that you need on the desk, but you will just shove things right to the
Yeah.
side and like make room. That's really interesting. Sorry,
Yeah,
I really do get excited about
whatever I'm
this.
focused on, I'll make that bigger. And with the plots, sometimes, I'm looking for really fine details, so I need to make it big. But I can't leave it that way because then there's not enough room for code. But now I know I probably could. So after we're done with this call, guess what I'm going to do first?
One full monitor just for the plots, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That's awesome.
I am very
I'm actually
happy.
just thinking the same thing, that I've been working with this little tiny console window. I think that I'm going to be undocking that and moving that over so that I can.
It looks
develop.
like we need documentation on that, Carlos.
I knew it was there, but I knew it was there. The problem actually was I was afraid, how am I going to get it back? But I just tried it and I saw, okay, I can
Wow.
just press the dock button once I've undocked it.
Probably, I was thinking, documentation is nice, but the problem is that an hour docs are also kind of, they have a lot of information and they're hard to navigate. So probably we could do like Twitch sessions when, for example, people can come out and say, like Lynn, for example, why can I do this? How can I do this? Then I can tell them, yeah, because Brian, for example, wrote me like, it would be really great if we could have another editor window. But I told him we have that, and it has been in Spyder like for 10 years. You can go here, go there, and then you can have new editor window, and as many as you want. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the fastest whatever you want to call it, enhancement request I've ever had treated.
Yeah.
Right, that's funny, like, because you could, so that's part of the reason, right, that we record it, at least in other projects that we record these calls, is because I've had some people in other places call them, right, like these are like proto documentation or like, so
Sure.
sometimes it's really cool. So yeah, show all your friends.
It might be interesting to get a bunch of Spyder users to show this is how I use Spyder for my work.
That's my personal
Well, there was
goal, yes.
there's a thread on
Exactly.
GitHub just for that.
I'll ping you, Brian, on that thread.
Yeah.
So the idea is that, probably you don't know why are the secret intentions of Isabella. Why
they're not secret.
Well, secret for him. But the thing is that Isabella is going to help us to design a new layout, default layout for Spyder 6. So I asked her to, the thing is that we would like to add several new panes in Spyder 6. Like, for example, by default, it could be the outline, because now we realize that people use it a lot, and perhaps if people don't explore the interface and don't know that there are more panes besides the basic ones, then they will never know that pane is part of Spyder. That's one thing, and the other thing is probably a viewer pane to display web content, as I told you. And we have, for example, the backend to display bookmarks in the editor, which will help, for example, in the case of Brian, to navigate huge code in Spyder more in an easier way, and things like that. But
wow.
In order to do that, we need to understand how people use in Spyder, what are their current layouts, and if we can create new areas without being intrusive or imposing like our own design. And Isabella knows more about that.
Just
Go
to
ahead.
specify, this is very early, like it's more that there's interest because, right, as you continue to add things, right, as you both mentioned, Spyder has a lot of different parts to it, right, and there are continually new things being added. It's that, is this working to manage all this, right? You may have noticed kind of the default is like editor, console, and then every other pane, almost all of them kind of live in that upper corner by default, right? And that's that's been the pattern. And so it's kind of, at least the way I'm seeing it, is like a reevaluation of, is there a pattern that might facilitate, you know, this extensibility more, especially with the API changes that were made specifically to make Spyder more extensible, right? That this seems like a good time to be thinking about that problem, just so you get some more specifics. But also, regardless of that problem, getting to see how people use Spyder, like actually seeing people click through it, is awesome for me in solving anything. So yeah, there's dual things. They're not secrets. I don't want to keep secrets. I just am nosy.
A little tidbit for you, Isabella, and Carlos. The way I actually got to Spyder is several years ago, I was working mainly in R, and I used R Studio. And then I started working more in Python, and I wanted an IDE. And somewhere I read something about Spyder has these layouts. So I tried it, and you know, there's a default for R Studio, and it's like, yeah, okay, that's what I'm used to. And then I moved things around. I learned, obviously not everything, but I learned how to manipulate it. And now, you know, I like Spyder way more than R Studio, just because like just the use of fonts and everything is so much better. When I go back to R Studio, it seems like I'm turning back the clock. It's just feels heavy and funky. But the layout, the fact that I could have things where I want them, that was a big deal. That's how I got here. And just this week on Reddit, somebody asked, they were coming from R and R Studio and what IDE, and everybody's saying, oh, just, you know, use VS Code or use Emacs, or, you know, all the people throw their favorites. And I said, hey, you know, Spyder is really cool, and it has a layout to match R Studio, so it might be easier for you to get up to speed. They were like, oh, cool, I'll go try it. So, you know, those things where you have some defaults that really make sense for certain user categories, I think that's kind of cool. Maybe there's more you could do with that.
Well, and we've also talked to, oh, go, Melissa, please.
No, I was just going to make a small note that this is how I got into Spyder, is because I use MATLAB. And I came from MATLAB
Yep.
to Spyder. And it's also very similar in terms of interface, and it's kind of what you expect. But Spyder goes above and beyond and does so much more than what MATLAB was able to do at the time. And so that's how I got into Spyder. So I think that is at least from what I've seen in the university, there is a very common use case as like coming from other languages, and then you want something familiar or that you can make look familiar, and then you end up, you know, looking for IDEs like that.
That's a great point. You know, I have a client, I worked with her like 2.5 years now, and after I came in on the project, 2 of their employees, they're like long time MATLAB, and they had a lot of stuff in MATLAB, and they did a lot of coding in MATLAB, and we needed to start using some open source. So I helped them get up to speed on Python, and I showed them Spyder, and boom, it was just like that. They both these people took on Spyder just like that. Now it's all they use, and it was part of that because it was so easy for them.
Right. It's interesting how important layouts are, right? I think a lot of the times in software, we're always talking about adding features, which obviously you want to be able to do things. I don't want to diminish that, but it's really easy to, like, you know what I mean? Like, just keep putting things. That's part of why the evaluation, like, just keep putting all the panes in that same corner. And, you know, so especially when there's some panes that like work, you know, well together, right? If you're debugging, you might need really different things, is like my theory, at least. We're seeing if that's true, maybe, but.
And if there are things where, I mean, yeah, the UI UX is a very important topic, and deserves a lot of discussion, because there are a lot of these subtleties, and just talking to people is one of the best ways. I had a question. I know we're going to come up on time. One thing for me is I use various other tools, and like one of the tools I use for Git is Gitkraken, which is a UI, a GUI for Git, and I love it. They're also very responsive, active development, and one of the things I like about Gitkraken is there's a Slack channel, and they talk to me, and I never feel comfortable putting just a question in the issues on GitHub because it seems like an inappropriate use of it. And so I've always wondered, you know, is there a forum? And I kind of wondered why there's not like a Slack or Discord for Spyder.
I think that that's a good idea. We have a guitar channel, but unfortunately, but yeah, I don't have much time to interact with users there. But we will try to. I mean, right now, for example, we split our time. So I mean, we are a team or 4 people. We split our days, for example, during the week because we received so many issues. So we will also try to be on Gitter, or probably Slack is better. I mean, because the Slack interface is much nicer than Gitter. So we could try to open a channel there. I don't know. What do you think, Stephanie, about Blaine's suggestion?
I think it is a really good idea, and we
Mhm.
hadn't discussed that. Like at the end, I guess we know by default that we have the gear, and we like took that for granted, kind of. Like we assume that all people will get into the gear if they have questions that were not like necessarily part of the issue tracker. So this is a really good idea, and I think we can do it.
Yeah, and I also agree that sometimes, for example, I mean, it's important to have a space just to ask questions. Questions like you, for example, have asked us today, like, is it possible for me to move just upload paints to a new window? And that's not an issue because you're not reporting any error, you're not complaining about the problem in Spyder or something that is broken, just simple question. And I understand that also you can get unblocked very quickly by us, like I did for you, for Brian, and for you, Blaine, today. So I think it's a very good idea. We will talk about that. And
Check with the Melissa just replied to me when I was saying, I think that
Sure.
one of the things, because I've had this with other projects that have Slacks, is that I had to somehow get an invite. I know that they've mentioned that Slack has changed to they do that a few times. It used to be really easy, and I don't know. So that may be a barrier too. I don't know.
So I'd like to propose that you take a look at Zulip. I don't know if you've seen this, but Isabella knows we've been using this for Napari. And it's a really cool interface. It's a different thing that you have to learn, but it allows you to talk. It's like, imagine Gitter, or for those of us who used it a lot, IRC, but then you have threads. And then you can organize things that you're saying. It goes all into the same stream, but it is organized by thread. So you can read just the thread that's interesting to you. It's really cool interface, and I've been finding it very nice. And I think it's also, you can join without an invite. I think you just have to authenticate with GitHub, just like you do for Gitter. And I've seen other open source projects using it. So just a suggestion to take a look and see if that's suitable.
Thanks a lot, Melissa. Yeah, that's a great idea. I have heard of Zulip before, haven't used it, but yes, especially that feature, the thread the conversations. I heard that it's really, really nice.
Because I have like a real problem with Slack, and that you do threads, but then you don't get notifications for the threads, and then you don't know that people have answered that, and then it's hard to go back. For Zulip, you can see if people are still talking about it, and if you have new notifications about that. So I feel it's more transparent, more organized than Slack, but that's me. I don't know if that's the same for everyone.
Yeah, I'm not promoting Slack. It's used in a lot of other sort of open source or other forums. But you know, everything ebbs and flows. I mean, before Slack, we did everything. You know, we use Skype on projects a lot. You know, we just had groups in Skype. So, you know, whatever works. But I didn't know that you had anything on Gitter. I don't really use that much, but I'll go look at it and see if I can get involved that way. But it's just it was that having, and I know there's a time burden, but I mean, if you think about the future of a community, I know in other areas I'm in, a lot of times the community is answering all the questions, and the core team sometimes only gets in if somebody can answer. Then they tag you. They say, well, maybe Carlos needs to answer this, but So just a thought. I was just curious. I mean, you guys have been great no matter what. So just, something to think about.
Thank you. Thanks a
Yeah,
lot.
I've gone onto the Gitter site, and it seems to be just this flood of please help me messages.
Yeah.
My homework is due in 3 hours, and I haven't been able to get things the installation to work out, so I've sort of fled from it. But
That's why, I mean,
uh,
the problem that I find with that is that answers get lost. So you can help someone, but then someone else gets with the same problem or comes to the forum with the same problem. So you have to repeat the same speech again and again and again. On issues, and that's why I participate more on issues, is because you can reference issues. And also in Stack Overflow, I have close to 30K points in Stack Overflow. That is because people can find my answers, so I don't have to keep repeating them. Okay, but I think we need to wrap up. Thanks a lot, Brian and Blaine, for attending today. It was really nice to meet you in person after a lot of interactions with
Very
you,
nice.
yeah, throughout the years. Hopefully you can also attend the next calls. We will plan to do them once a month, the first Wednesday of every month. We will announce them on Twitter. On Twitter. And yeah, it's been a pleasure talking to you, getting to you a bit more, and getting to know you. Sorry, a bit more, and also, yeah, I mean, it's hopefully these calls in future calls more people also attend and let us know how they are using Spyder, what are the cool features that they know, and stuff like that. Go ahead, sir.
You can invite your people too if you want. It's a public call. You said, but yeah,
Perfect.
of course.
Thank you so
you so
much.
much.
Very nice idea. So thank you. I'm going to stop recording.